great pod by the Cleveland Sports Collective.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cleveland Sports Collective podcast series. I'm Tom Moore, and my co-host is Josh Brickner. The Cleveland Browns had a chance to clinch their first playoff appearance since 2002 on Sunday against the New York Jets, but let the game slip away amid turnovers, defensive miscommunications, bad play on the offensive line, a bad day from the officials, and an assist from COVID-19. The Browns now face what is basically a playoff game in Week 17 at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Win, and you advance to the playoffs. Lose, and you're left to wonder what might have been. Just as there is no joy in Mudville, there is no victory Monday today in Cleveland. So, how you doing, Josh?
I've been better football-wise, I can't lie. Unfortunately, just like the Browns, my most important fantasy football team blew a huge shot to win yesterday, even with the 57-point lead from Alvin Kamara. And it was based on injuries as well. So yeah, with the Browns game and I have a chance, just like the Browns, I have a chance tonight if Josh Allen can have a huge game. But so football wise, I'm in a little bit of a sour mood, you could say.
All right, we're going to spend some time on yesterday's game, but I think sometimes the less said, the better. I don't know if we're actually going to be able to stick to that today, but we're going to start off with a quick three things that we liked from yesterday, which I know sounds a little odd coming from what happened to MetLife Stadium, but I think there are a few things that we can take away to kind of kick things off on a positive mode. So what's your first thing you liked?
My one and only thing, because I like pretty much nothing, is we give him a hard time on this podcast all the time. So I liked Andrew Sendejo's pass breakup on that big third down in the fourth quarter. And I think it was in the fourth quarter, but yeah, he had that big pass break up on third down. That's the only thing I liked from the game, and the other two things are nothing and nothing. So
okay, we'll see if we can find some stuff. You never want, obviously things are always disappointing after a loss, but I did like the fact that Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield did not come out and make any excuses. Stefanski, as hard as it had to have been for him to admit, knowing that Adam Gase was on the other sideline, came out and said, I got outcoached today. Baker Mayfield came out and said, I failed the team. The second, Baker, obviously, there's probably some truth to that with the 3 turnovers. Again, it's hard. I've been having a hard time processing, and I don't want to accept the idea that Adam Gase outcoached Kevin Stefanski. But, if nothing else, there's no finger pointing. There's no shifting of the blame. Might not have helped at all on Sunday. Obviously, it didn't. But I do think it goes a long way toward keeping this team together and focused on what lies ahead. Because what lies ahead is, people have talked all year, this is the most important game of the season. This is the most important game of the season. Well, guess what? This week at home in Pittsburgh is the most important game of the season.
No, I would agree with you. And actually, I did mention that in both of our 3 things we didn't like. I did when we were talking about the play calling and Baker Mayfield. I did like that both Baker and Coach Stefanski kind of took the blame for it, even though there's many things that went wrong. But it's good to see that especially, Coach Stefanski is the leader of the team, and then, your field general kind of taking responsibility. So yeah, I was going to mention that and when I, when we brought up the postmortem of yesterday. So, but yeah, I agree. Those were 2 positive things right there.
Okay. I will also I want to give props to Jamarcus Bradley for his work in the second half. He did his best to continue the trend that we keep talking about of a different wide receiver stepping up each week. And in the second half, he had 4 receptions for 54 yards. For a guy that has been on the practice squad all year, undrafted free agent, pretty much, everybody joked that he met Baker Mayfield and the other guys on the offense for the first time in the parking garage Sunday morning. He did what he could. I mean,
Right.
obviously he's limited. There's a reason why he's been on the practice squad, why he was an undrafted free agent. But the fact that he came down with 4 receptions, 54 yards, would have even had a bigger day if Baker had not overthrown him on that shot on the left sideline in the fourth quarter. I mean, he was open.
Yes, he was.
He did his job. And unfortunately, just Baker put a little too much on it. So I do think this might be our one and only time we see Jamarcus Bradley on the field in a Browns uniform. But, give the kid props.
Absolutely. I think he obviously played much better than Marvin Hall, who will he even be, I doubt gets another shot. And I'd much rather see Bradley if we have a situation where we need an emergency receiver again than Marvin Hall. So I absolutely agreed. And you got to think, I mean, it was his first half of football. So it seems like the whole offense kind of things went a little better in the second half. So yeah, I agree. Props to Jamarcus Bradley for stepping up and, being the one, I guess, receiver that, I think that actually caught some footballs.
So, and then the last of my 3 things to like is let's give credit to Myles Garrett. He picked up his 12th sack of the season when he brought down Sam Darnold in the first half. That is the 4th best single season total in franchise history, according to the Browns. And it now leaves Garrett just 2 sacks shy of tying Reggie Camp's official team record for sacks in a single season. So bravo to Mr. Garrett.
Absolutely. And the fact that I didn't put that on here is we kind of take it for granted. And we might be having a much different conversation today if the refs would have let that play out where he had the strip sack, which could have been if they would have let it return for a touchdown, because that was kind of a 50-50 play. If they let it play out, we could be talking about a fumble return for a touchdown there in the first half. So I believe that was Myles Garrett that made that play.
Right. And then Malcolm Smith.
And then Malcolm Smith, scooped it up. So that's, I mean, we can talk about the officiating because that was definitely, because usually they're taught to let those play out. And then if it's a score, if it's a turnover, then they review it and can decide. But I feel like that one was so close. If they let it play out, I don't think they can overturn it. Just like, could they overturn it since they called it incomplete? To me, it looked like he knocked it out in his hand. Empty hand was coming forward. So that was that one of those breaks that kind of changed the game, and at least when it gave us some momentum and another score that ended up being the difference in the game. So
I know that would have been a big turning point because the defense really needed to step up.
Yep.
Right there and do something because it took the offense so long to find its way, and they never really got into a nice consistent. It never felt like they got into a nice consistent rhythm all day long. It was like constantly just working and fighting against everything that was going on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. They had those drives there in the third quarter and going in the fourth quarter, but you're right. It wasn't what we had seen the last, back half of the season where it was just more of a rhythm that, it was kind of scattershot, but at least, they made it close and unfortunately couldn't come up victorious in the end.
So see, we found 3 things to be happy about, 3 things we did like.
That's
true.
True.
We could do it.
And you see, I was going to talk about Stefanski and Baker, but Myles Garrett, and that's kind of shame on me for kind of taking his great play for granted. And let's be honest, he's probably still not 100% recovered from COVID-19. So the fact that he's out there contributing and that he just knew he had to make a play and he could argue that he did make a game-changing play there in that first half that got taken away. So.
All right, everybody, let's buckle up here because now we're going to move on to the 3 things we did not like from
time to eat our vegetables. Yep.
So I'm going to let Josh kick this one off here and run with it for a while.
Yeah, I would say the play calling was curious. Now, I have to start off saying this, and we advance and we talked about with Stefanski taking the blame. I work from home today, so I couldn't hear the rate, but allegedly there was people calling for Kevin Stefanski's job after yesterday's performance on talk show radio. Those people are absolute morons and need to rethink their lives because that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. So we're gonna get that out of the way right now. Just me criticize the play calling is not me joining those wackos that are calling for Kevin Stefanski's job. So we're gonna put that out there first. I get that we were behind our backup offensive linemen. And let's be honest, Harris and Lamb did not play well. So we didn't, they knew we were going to run the ball and there was no there was, I mean, I guess there was kind of, what's the best way to put it? There was no holes early and it was getting stuffed and we felt like we couldn't do it. But this is really the first time, and we've commented on this podcast, how we were so impressed that Stefanski stuck with the run, even though, you're behind 3 points, you're not getting many stops. I know we fell behind, decently well behind, but I think that having Baker Mayfield throw 53 times when you have no wide receivers, your top 4 receivers are out, was a huge mistake in my opinion. I think we abandoned the run too quick, and it to me that was I mean, I think this is Stefanski's worst game. And like you said, I was going to mention it. He admitted he was out coached, and that's a humbling thing to say when Adam Gase is on the other sideline. So this was definitely Stefanski's worst game that he called, and out of the 15 that he's done this year.
Yeah, it was, the whole running game situation was really surprising because, like you mentioned, and I was thinking back to the Eagles game, we've seen time and time again this year where they just keep grinding and they keep grinding and they keep grinding, and eventually it breaks open. And it for the first time all year, it kind of felt like they stopped grinding. And I know they were down, they were down, what was it, 20-3, but that's not an insurmountable situation. No. And I just really thought, I was really kind of surprised, even at the lack of success that they were having, that they just didn't kind of stick with it. And a couple of things on that, Joel Bitonio came out after the game, or, perhaps this morning, and was talking about how the Jets were really stacking over the guards in the center. And that kind of, went back to everybody saying, well, the Jets are just going to stack the box. They're going to play everybody, in tight, and they're going to, dare the Browns to beat them with the pass. But then on ESPN today, Bill Barnwell came out with, the same line of thinking, that saying, the assumption was the Jets were going to sell out to stop the run. But according to him, and he's quoting NFL Next Generation stats, the Browns did not run into a single box all game where they had more defenders than blockers, and they were the only team in the league to avoid doing so. So the Jets were not putting more guys in the box. It just turns out that, according to Barnwell, the Browns just weren't good at creating running lanes. And obviously, Mayfield had some accuracy issues. They had problems on early downs. They ended up 3rd and 9, 8 or more times. And that's going back to the 2019 Browns, when you were in 3rd and long constantly. And only one of those 8 times did they convert that 3rd down into a 1st down, and that came on a Marvin Hall pass interference penalty. It was such a mess. And I think the reason it was a mess was because of Kendall Lamb and Nick Harris having issues, but it's still, and this is all going to kind of like stack together here as we talk about this. It's just, the reason they couldn't run the ball was not the reason that everybody kind of thought it was. It was the fact that they could not get anything going.
Right. And it put them in must throw situations. And then,
and
then we're behind the game script. Yep. Yeah.
That was really weird.
Yeah. It's frustrating. It just is frustrating because it's so much to play for, but what do you expect when you lose? Obviously Teller was going to be out and Hubbard, so Harris knew was going to be in there, but as much as we gave him props last week, as good as he played last week, he played probably just as bad on the opposite side this week, which is kind of, I know we picked up another guard off waivers for depth, that you just pray that Teller can start on Sunday, and that whatever Jedrick Wills is non-COVID related, but I'd send him a thing of soup right now via Postmates. I'm sure the rest of Browns Nation would as well. So we hope to see at least Jedrick Wills, if not Wyatt Teller back by Sunday.
Yeah, Teller and Hubbard being down was huge because Harris played like really what he is. He's a rookie 5th round draft choice, playing for guard for the first time, and probably I know he played it at Washington, but it's been 2 or 3 years since he played guard, and he looked that way. And Harris and Lamb combined to give up 7 quarterback pressures and 2 sacks. And there's that kind of like nagging feeling that we're going to get one of those sequels that no one asked for this week, depending on how things break injury wise with Teller and illness wise with Wills, which we're going to get to here in a little bit.
Right. The best you can do, I guess, is they'll have a whole week of practice. You would hope that would, and but we'll get to this later. And maybe will we be facing Steelers first teamers? Maybe, maybe not. But those guys are still on the team, and whether they're the backups or not. So let's hope that it's a learning experience for both of them, and if they're starting Sunday, that they can take steps forward. This is me. That's me trying to be positive.
All right. So what else didn't we like? Let's air some more grievances.
Yeah, there is. I would say Baker Mayfield turnovers. I don't want to belabor the point, so I'm just going to really quote the man himself. Quote Baker Mayfield after the game. Quote, "There is no excuse, plain and simple. I failed this team. I put 3 balls on the ground. 2 of them they recovered. The other one, the 4th down, obviously I need to hold on to the damn ball." Quote, "We had exactly what we needed to win this game, and I didn't do good enough. That's it. It sucks that we didn't have our guys, but we believe in the guys that we have in the locker room, no matter who it is. That's why they're here. That's why they're Cleveland Browns. That's why they were brought here. That's why we sued them up. We believe in them and told every one of those guys that. Here's the thing. This one is going to sting for a day or two, but we have the Steelers to win and get in," Mayfield said before leaving the Zoom call abruptly. "Yes, I'm aware of what could have happened if we won today. It is what it is. I'm going to roll with these punches back against the wall, and we have to win to get in. I'm not going to dwell." Oh, yep. Yeah, this is just me then. I'm not going to dwell on the performance, like I said. Like we talked before, I love that he took responsibility. And I think, if anything positive is going to come out of this, it's going to motivate him he's going to be locked in, the confident F everybody, us against the world guy on Sunday. And that's the best Baker that we can hope for. And that's the one I expect to see on Sunday.
Right. And, it's at least one of the fumbles came because, Lamb got beat, but Baker was holding onto the ball a little bit too long. But I'm not sure what, that kind of goes back into the fact that, who knows what these wide receivers were doing. I know they were out there doing their best, but were they running the right routes? Were they, you're down to your 7th, 8th, 9th guy on the roster, even if they were running the correct routes, were they getting separation? Are these NFL level guys? And even despite that, I'm just looking at the box score real quick. 15 targets to Austin Hooper, the high priced tight end that the Browns brought in. He only caught 7 of those for 71 yards. They still had him. 7 targets to Harrison Bryant, everybody's, rookie draft darling, 3 catches. This is they had other guys on the field, and when Baker was finding them, they either were not catching the ball or they were not doing anything, with the ball. And that got very frustrating as well. And I think that could have, the 53 passes is probably not something that Stefanski would want to do again. And obviously things got a little bit away from them, but it's hard to say you shouldn't have thrown 53 passes without saying, well, why can't your guys catch the ball when Baker's hitting them in the hands?
Yeah, and some of those throws, like when I watched the replay highlights, basically right before he came on here, because I wanted to have it fresh in my mind, and I was sure as heck only going to do it once. It's better in the first quarter. One of them to Bryant was way out, was not a good throw. So some of these throws weren't great. Some of them were. You're right. And then. And I mean, Hooper didn't really. You're right. He didn't do too much after the catch. You'd want him to. It's on Baker folding the ball on the 4th down play, but you'd really like Hooper to try and make an athletic move and get that first down. I know it's asking a lot, but I don't know. You're right. It's not. It's probably the worst situation you could put a quarterback in to take out his top 4 receivers that he's been practicing with and game planning with. Basically, literally the night before the game. So it's a worst case scenario. And I mean, I think I'm gonna be positive because we have to win on Sunday. That we're gonna get the F everybody Baker Mayfield, who's gonna stand up against the criticism and deliver one of his patented performances, and we'll be much happier talking about this a week from now.
And talking a little bit about Hooper on the first down, or on that 3rd down catch. I know it's bad form to talk about the officiating, especially after a team loses, but I've been watching the NFL for a long time, and I've seen a lot of 3rd down completions that are a lot less close to the first down marker than Hooper get called the first down. They eat. I mean, just I don't know
Yep.
why they didn't, they could have given him the first down. Other guys have done it a lot less. And it's just one of those things where the refs just do not, and I know we're biased, blah, 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 but they just could not catch a break. I mean, they did catch one on that, that makeup call on
On the roughing the passer.
roughing the passer. But how do you miss when Baker fumbled that may or may not been a fumble? Because if Sam Darnold's fumble wasn't a fumble, I don't think Baker's fumble was a fumble. But even if it was, that was the most blatant hands to the face penalty on the defensive guy who raked his hand right across Mayfield's, face and face mask. How do you not call that?
Unfortunately, if you're talking about the first fumble, that would have been an interception anyways, because the ball literally went from his hand to that guy's. So
but it should have been negated by the penalty because the guy ripped his face. Yeah,
I saw holding penalties and hands in the face. Yeah, I mean NFL officiating is terrible. I say it every week. It's awful. It's unfortunate, and I'm sure we're going to see it this coming weekend and is going to playoffs. That there's going to be some terrible calls that are gonna basically decide championships, and it's sad, but that happens more often than not, unfortunately. And yeah, NFL officiating forever is and will be terrible, which again, for a multi-billion-dollar organization, sometimes the NFL is run like like a kid's lemonade stand as far as organization and things like that. So
all right, moving on. Do the Browns have a Parkey problem going on?
Okay, here's a scenario, and answer this as honestly as you can. It's Sunday, 3:45. Browns are down by a point. 5 seconds. Ball in the Steelers' 25. Do you trust Cody Parkey to make that kick and send us to the playoffs? Yes or no?
You have to.
Okay, well that's fine, because I was going to say if you said no, then we have then there needs to be kicker tryouts in Berea. So I would be a little bit concerned about it, but and here's another thing that I thought of when we were driving. I thought to myself, if we score, are we going for 2?
It would have been interesting.
Yeah.
It would have definitely been an interesting call. I would have say probably not.
I wouldn't think so either. But
I don't know how how much Stefanski would have gambled, because a tie would have done the Browns almost as much, it would have done them as much good as a win.
As a win, right? So I guess in that situation, because the analytics say, well, to get 2 yards is easier, especially have a struggling kicker, than to maybe make a 30, whatever they now 35, 38, whatever yard field goal. But you're right. If we could have played a scoreless 10 minutes, then I think we'd be in the playoffs right now. Then, right?
Or at least, it would have been better than what the result was.
Correct.
But yeah, more to your point, every week we're starting to get a little more concerned that Parkey's going to cost this team. The Browns are not going to get out of this season without him costing them something.
Yes.
This is the 3rd week in a row. I believe he's missed an extra point. He missed a field goal against the Ravens.
Yep.
He doinked that one yesterday. It may not be this upcoming Sunday, but I'll be surprised if they make it out of 2020 without him costing them. Now, hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully the double hope is that if it does come down to that, it doesn't happen until the playoffs, because we don't want it to happen this Sunday.
No, we don't.
But trying to bring, anybody who's out on the street right now is probably not.
It's not as good, right?
It's not a better option, just because that's a tough situation, to throw someone into.
Yeah, you're right. And let's be honest, it could have been yesterday because it should have been a 6-point game. We score and he could have made, makes extra point to take the lead. Mm-hmm. If we go into overtime and lose, it would have been yesterday when he cost us. So did we escape that since we lost anyways? I don't know, but it would have been yesterday. So you just can't miss extra points right now in field goals. You can't, every point's huge. We'll talk about the Steelers, but we have hard enough time beating the Steelers the last 20 years. We don't need missed extra points and field goals coming back to haunt us on Sunday. So let's hope we're not, if we're talking about Cody Parkey, it's in the positive light, come a week from now.
Oh, see, now I just got depressed.
Sorry, I know. And in a close game when you're fighting for playoff spots, kicking matters. I feel like the Browns are kind of cursed in the fact that we had a great left tackle in a very good kicker in Phil Dawson that are pretty much wasted here for years, especially Joe Thomas, that were wasted. And I like Jedrick Wills. He's played really solid, and we obviously saw how much we missed him. But, how much would you love to have a guy like Joe Thomas in a game like yesterday? So in that fact, I think the Browns are cursed that, we had such a great Hall of Fame, probably one of the best left tackles, and then a very good kicker that were pretty much just wasted in squalor here for many years.
And it's a little strange too that they currently have allegedly the greatest special teams coordinator in the league, and Parkey's going through struggles, and his struggles are overshadowing the fact that Jamie Gillian's not very good.
No,
he's not having a good year at all.
He's not. I mean, for a guy that beat out a Pro Bowler last year, yeah, he's been very disappointing this entire year. So yeah, I agree. Mike Pfeiffer, we're saying it. I think, he's the one holdover. That's great, but I'm not a special teams coach, so I really can't say anything. But yeah, it seems like we're always talking about some portion of the special teams game on our negative list here. So
right, because that could be just as costly with the whole field position.
Yeah.
Thing if he biffs a punt and all of his at the wrong time, all of a sudden we're they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Or if the weather's bad, if the weather's bad Sunday, it could be a field position game, and yeah, that's special teams could play a huge role. I didn't mean to make you sad, but it just, we're thinking out loud, and it could happen. Any given Sunday, football's a weird game.
All right, let's close that door and go down to another dark corridor here with our next thing we did not like.
Oh, the defensive break.
We're both on, yeah.
Yeah, the defensive break. And watching the highlights, because I was watching, I was like, okay, I need to, maybe just because I was upset yesterday that we were losing, and I didn't think, we're a much better team on paper so I was upset. But watching the highlights again and breaking it down, on all three of the Jets touchdowns, those, Jameson, Crowder, and then Berrios were just wide open. The breakdown on the defensive end was just porous and disgusting. I thought I was watching Ohio State play a MAC bottom dweller MAC team, and guys are running free and wide open. It's just, in the professional level, that just shouldn't happen. And it was disgusting. And it's, we're not blaming on Sendejo. I think it was Redwine that got beat on the trick play, I believe. And then I think Joseph got beat on Crowder on the touchdown in the second half. So the entire defensive secondary, probably minus Ward, was guilty of playing awful on those three instances yesterday.
Yeah, I think the third quarter one to Crowder, like you said, I think that was
Joseph.
Or it was one of the safeties. They just bumped into each other and he got out. And then that second quarter one where they hit Chris Herndon, the tight end, that was just absolutely horrible.
He was standing there by himself. Honestly, that was probably the worst touchdown we've given up since that week one where Mark Andrews could have, could have grilled a hamburger there and had a cold beer while Lamar Jackson found him. So,
and the frustrating thing is these communication breakdowns seem to keep on happening. And there was some talk after the game and today that the Browns really missed linebacker BJ Goodson, because he's the guy that goes out there, he calls the plays, he gets everybody set and lined up. And if that is the case and he is missed that much, they're in deep trouble, because he's playing Sunday against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he's out.
That's a lock. He's not going to play.
Yep.
And if it's such a big void there, they're gonna have to figure this out in the next 6 days. Who's going to be making these calls? Because if Sam Darnold and the Jets can exploit all this miscommunications, I don't want to think about what Roethlisberger and some of the guys in the Steelers can do.
Yeah, that's again, the defense is a problem. It's been a problem all year, save for a few good performances, bend but don't break, or bad weather. So it's by far the weakest point of this team, probably aside of our two superstars and then 2, 3, 4 other guys. It's this defense. We've talked about it before, and let's say hopefully it's many weeks before we have to have our wrap up end of the, start talking about the draft. But we will be having a mostly defensive draft, and I'm assuming that that first pick will be a linebacker, and it better well be. So yeah, if they don't, I was talking to somebody earlier before we came on, and it's like, if they don't go much like Andrew Berry, focused on, in the offense and in this his first off season,
it'll be stunning if they don't do something to address the defense in this coming off season, in free agency and especially in the draft.
No, though, I mean, they have to. It's, Joseph, for the most part, I've liked. I feel like he's made some big plays, but Sendejo's, yeah, I mean, we need to go into it. Just go back and listen to our other podcasts if you want to know how we feel about Sendejo. I mean, red wine's okay. Obviously, you hope Delpit's back and ready to go. Losing Greedy was a much bigger loss than we thought. I mean, Johnson, the rest of these guys just aren't, they have their moments, but they're not holding up. And it's, and I mean, Mac Wilson has just been, I mean, I used to defend John Dorsey, but watching some of his draft picks perform is terrible. And also, lest we forget that John Dorsey drafted rapper Chad Thomas 10 picks ahead of Sam Hubbard, who's had very good seasons for the Cincinnati Bengals. So basically, thanks for nothing, John Dorsey, is how we're gonna address that. And maybe a few decent picks, but a lot of these picks have ended up being terrible. So,
right. And so I'm gonna close this out with one last thing that I did not like before we move on to we shut the door on the Jets and move on to Pittsburgh. People have been whining on and off all year about why the Browns don't have Mayfield run a quarterback sneak on 4th down. Well, we saw the reason why yesterday. This is the second time he's fumbled on one of those. Let's just shut this down now. You have Nick Chubb on the team. You have what is supposedly one of the game's top fullbacks in Andy Janovich. Just give the ball in that situation and make it work. I don't want to hear any more about, why don't the Browns run more quarterback sneaks? I'm done with it. I'm over it. That's a knee-jerk reaction. I don't care. I'm allowed to be emotional every once in a while. I don't want that. Burn it out of the playbook. I hate it anyways, because all you're doing is asking for someone to come and take a kill shot on Mayfield in that situation. It's a stupid play. There's no reason to do it. Get it out of there.
And I will put myself on that list, because I think, and it was a couple weeks, I forget which game it was, where we might have got stood up on a 4th down play. I'm like, why don't we just run a sneak? Maybe it was against Jacksonville. Why don't we just run a sneak? And then the Tennessee game happened, and we saw why we don't just run a sneak. So I was one of those people, but I will be calling for quarterback sneaks 0 times anymore. Obviously the odds of us getting the 1st down are much less than Baker fumbling, you're right, or getting hurt. So with no more sneaks, give it to Chubb. If not, give it to Hunt, put Janovich in. That's that's why those guys are there. I agree with you 100%, and I was wrong about that. I think I said it after the Jacksonville game. So I will rescind my quarterback sneak calls. Obviously, I would say they should never do it after the Titans game myself, but that they did it yesterday, and I would have much rather seen Chubb get the ball with him get the ball behind Andy Janovich. But
and if they do it this Sunday and it's Baker takes it in for the game-winning touchdown, of course it'll be the greatest play in the history of the NFL. So.
Sure.
Just put that out there.
Then we're not going to be. Then we're just going to be here happy. So there'll be no reason to kind of call ourselves out. So, but if he does it and we win, if we win, then we'll get in. We're about to get in this. Everything will be forgotten about yesterday's fiasco. So, just win. Just to quote Al Davis, just win, baby. That's all we got to do on Sunday.
I know. So it wouldn't be 2020 without COVID-19 becoming an issue or a talking point with the Browns, and it certainly was this weekend. We've already talked about BJ Goodson is going to be out against the Steelers because of the new testing protocols. He's not going to be eligible to come back in. The Browns were without Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Kadero Hodge because they were high-risk close contacts with Goodson because they were all hanging out in the pool, in the hot tub together. From listening to Stefanski today, everybody seems very positive and hopeful that those guys are all going to be back at practice, as well as linebacker Jacob Phillips on Thursday, as long as they keep testing negative. I think it's important to remember none of those guys were currently positive. They were not, They did not come down with a positive test.
They were just
they were hanging out, and still a little unsure about why all the wide receivers are hanging out with those guys in the pool as with the linebackers, because I would kind of think the team would be a little more. I thought, they were very good at keeping the position groups separate. And Stefanski did kind of say that he seemed a little pissed about it today. I don't remember exact quote, but he was basically like, we got to tighten up on this. And I do think it's also kind of interesting, especially in light of who the Browns might be facing at some point this Sunday at quarterback for Pittsburgh, that the NFL supposedly has video of at least one of the players not wearing their mask correctly. Now, somehow they can have video of guys hanging out in the hot tub, but they lose that there's no chance in hell they have audio of the last couple minutes of a primetime nationally televised game.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I'm going to say this, and we've kind of avoided this topic, but it needs to be said. And let's be honest, it's going to be said 50 more times, especially if a certain, backup Steelers quarterback plays. But the NFL had that audio, and they legit destroyed it within. I mean, that was they either Tom Brady their phone or whatever the audio is, because if that existed anywhere, I was just saying TMZ is going to find this or somebody's going to find this, but obviously I don't think it exists anymore. And I always found it interesting that Mason Rudolph kept saying he was going to sue Myles Garrett, and I feel like if he did that, then somebody would be required to produce that audio, and I don't think he really wants that. So I mean, this is going to be brought up, and I'm going to say the reaction was still terrible. I said this, for the last year plus. The reaction it's not an appropriate reaction, but I don't think a guy like Myles Garrett would do that for nothing. So I'm thinking that was said personally. From what I've heard about Mason Rudolph, allegedly, I say allegedly, so don't get he seems like the kind of daddy's boy that would sue us. He's not a great person, so. I would assume that he did say that to try and get under Myles' skin, and it worked, unfortunately. So,
and then,
I know that's we went down the rabbit hole. I have a feeling that come tomorrow or Thursday, if it's announced that Big Ben is sitting, that will be talked about from now until the cows come home, because it's another angle to this game. So
yeah, we're gonna let's get back to the Steelers sitting players here in a minute. The Browns got another curveball thrown at them Sunday morning when it was announced that Jedrick Wills was going to miss the game with an illness. Last Thursday he was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list because he was been exposed to someone. He came off the list on Saturday, then he was inactive on Sunday with that illness. And at first it was like, oh, that's good. But then you kind of started thinking about it. When Myles Garrett went down with COVID, he was out sick for a couple of days at practice before he was diagnosed. So we got to hope for the best here for Wills, that this is not this is not the early stages of, oh, well, guess what? You got a sore throat or whatever it is, this illness. In a couple of days, it's like, oops, you got COVID-19.
Yeah, that's the nightmare scenario, because like I said before, if that's the case, then Kendall Lamb, there's not too many times in life you get second chances. You're going to have one on Sunday. So please make the most of it, young man, if that happens. That's all I'm going to say. I want Jedrick Wills back in there, like every person in Northeast Ohio, if it's just a simple cold. He keeps testing negative. Like I said, I'm sure there'll be Postmates of soup and whatever he would like to make him feel better sent to his house immediately, wherever it is. So let's hope that it's just a cold. And if he keeps testing negative, then hopefully we'll have him back on Sunday.
And then I know there was a ton of talk about why the game was not postponed with everything going on with the Browns. And Mary Kay Cabot at Cleveland.com had actually a really good story. She talked to, I think it's Brian McCarthy, the PR guy for the NFL. And he came out with an explanation of what was going on. And it's not what Browns fans want to hear, but I think it is a legitimate, explanation that they followed the protocols that were agreed to between the league and the Players Association. And medical professionals determined that since there was no risk of additional transmission of the virus among the team or the facility, that the game could be played safely as scheduled. It wasn't that 6 guys came down with COVID. It was 1 guy came down with COVID and the other guys just happened to be near him. He also emphasized that the league has communicated to the clubs that this season would have to be different, and competitive concerns would be secondary to the health and the safety of the players and the personnel. The teams bear the burden when there are issues among their personnel or facility. Obviously, the Browns bear the burden on that of not making sure position groups are not bunched up together in the hot tub or in the pool area. And all decisions where games have been moved this season were to ensure the health and safety of the participants and personnel. It's frustrating, but I think the league did what they said they've done all year. And I think it was pretty consistent with what they've done. I know the Baltimore.
Well, it's consistent after Baltimore, but that's true. But it's almost like they got the Browns and then the Broncos, obviously. I mean, let's be honest, it could have been worse, like the Broncos. It could have been our quarterback room. But I mean, I guess those teams got punished because their players didn't catch COVID, where the Ravens are probably doing the same thing. And they actually caught coronavirus, so they got their game moved out more. So that's my problem with it. It seems like the Broncos, the Browns got punished because they only had one player get it, but guys were in contact with them. Where if all those guys are tested positive, maybe we're playing Wednesday, or and all those guys can play. So it's. That's the frustrating part to me, but I agree with you that that's what they've done. And if the Broncos have to start a practice squad guy who hasn't played quarterback since he was in college, then they weren't going to move the game for us. So, and it's just so frustrating because even if you had Hodge, if you had one of those guys, it would have made such a huge difference yesterday. And they're just getting peppered with targets. Even Hodge, Higgins, DPJ, any of them, I feel like maybe we can pull it out, but. It's 2020, and you got to roll with the punches and go with what you have, I guess.
I know I would have, whenever, if it was today over Zoom or whenever Stefanski gets these guys together, oh my God, to be in that room and have him. I mean, he's going to be dropping the hammer on these guys of,
yes.
We're so close to getting through this in one piece, and we're so close to making the playoffs. Let's just tighten it the F up here.
Yeah, that segment they will not be recording that one for building the Browns, I'm guessing. And if they do, I doubt it makes it's going to be on the cutting room floor. So yes, I think he'll bring the hammer, as he should, because obviously all four of them screwed up. That's the point. They don't want all those guys together. So if something like that happens, you only lose one or two of your starting four wide receivers, and not all of them. And you're bringing up guys from the practice squad who have no chemistry, who have no chemistry with your starting quarterback. Even if it was Hodge, he's been here since last year. Him and Mayfield at least know each other, and that chemistry between a wide receiver and quarterback is something that can't be replaced, and it can't be. It's not going to be brought up in a parking garage. And it took him a half to he realized Bradley was really the only person he could trust, so it took a half to kind of get going.
Yeah, and that's probably the ultimate frustrating part of the whole thing is this didn't all happen because these guys were all out of the nightclub,
right,
or all out doing something. They were at the team facility. They were getting treatment. They just slipped up a little bit, and they just happened to, if all four of those guys had gone into the pool treatment area a half hour later, Goodson wouldn't have been there.
Right.
It's just that's the frustrating thing. This was just one of those slip ups, those lapse, not even a lapse of judgment. It's just one of those unfortunate circumstances that could kind of happen to anybody. It just happened to them.
Yep. Agreed. And we got to move forward, and it's a must win. Like you said before, we always talk about every game is the most important game of the season. It's Monday night against the Ravens. It's the Titans game. And we've said it here. It's going into New York on Sunday night. Sunday is the most important game of the season. It's win and you're in the playoffs, lose and you need some help that I don't think you're going to get personally. So.
Right. So that brings us actually up to our playoff talk and a little bit about Sunday's game. Like you said, this is as simple of a scenario as you could hope for. Just win and the Browns make the playoffs. They don't need to worry about scoreboard watching. They don't have to pray for some kind of miracle upset. They don't have to worry about, or it's some team tying, or this team has to win, but they have to win by 45 points. Just win the game. Nothing else.
Yes, agreed. You just got to win. I mean, to me, it would be great to exercise some demons, beat Big Ben and the Steelers. Playing most of their starters. When I'm thinking about it, they haven't had a week off, and because their bye week was that in week 5, week 6 that because of the Titans situation got moved. So I would see them resting their. If not, I think they rest at least Big Ben. So I know I got in trouble for saying yesterday that if you can't beat the Jets, do you really deserve a playoff spot? But I'm going to say, I'm going to go on record. If you can't beat Mason Rudolph at home and he starts, then you don't deserve a playoff spot. Chuck can come after me. That's fine. I'm just going to say, you can't beat Mason Rudolph at home. You don't deserve to make the playoffs. I think that's a fact. People can argue if we lose and we get in because, Gardner Minshew or Mike Lennon, knock off the Colts, or I forget who the other teams are playing, or the Bills decide they want to, their backup quarterback comes in and plays a good game. That's fantastic. But if you can't beat Mason Rudolph at home, you don't deserve to make the playoffs. So there, I said it 3 times. So,
well, I think in some regards, I'm going to disagree a little bit, but I'm going to kind of agree. As frustrating as the Jets loss was, as frustrating as losing to the Raiders are, if the Browns don't win this week, I think that's what proves they don't deserve to be a playoff team, because if they lose to Pittsburgh, that means they went 2-4 in the division this year.
Yep.
And if you go 2-4 in your division, that is, I think, is what signals that you're, quote, not deserving of being a playoff team, because 2-4 is just unacceptable. You can't be doing that.
The only 2 wins against the Bengals. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the whole, will Tomlin sit people? Will he play the starters? Because it kind of comes down to seeding. If Buffalo wins tonight, they're 12-3. They're tied with Pittsburgh. They have the tiebreaker over the Steelers
because they beat them. Right.
So the question is, there's no bye week this week for the number 2 seed, the way there is in the past.
Right.
So in the past, you could see Pittsburgh saying, okay, we need that number 2 seed because we need that bye week. There's no bye week. Bye week, yeah. Buffalo and Pittsburgh are both going to be playing they're both playing at 1:00. Buffalo's playing Miami. Pittsburgh's playing Cleveland, because NBC is, in love with the NFC East for reasons that are completely unexplainable. Because they flexed Washington, Philadelphia into the Sunday night game instead of Cleveland, Pittsburgh, which was the only logical game this Sunday.
Well, I think they do that because, but you're right. I think they want all those teams playing at once, don't they? Because Dallas they don't want
the Giants are at 1:00. So whoever wins Dallas and the Giants, if Philadelphia wins that, the winner of the Dallas Giants game wins the NFC East. If Washington wins the NFC East.
So I guess
nobody wants to watch
right.
Washington and Philadelphia.
We don't, but I think for competitive purposes, they don't want if the Browns play at 8:00 and the Colts get knocked off, then the Browns don't have to win then. So I think that's the issue. Which because you're right, because if whoever wins, you're right, that Giants and Cowboys game, they still need Washington to lose. So Washington has to win no matter what.
Exactly. So I still don't like it. Still nobody.
I know. No one wants to watch it, but it's for competitive reasons. And yeah, of course, we love it if it's Sunday at 8 and we've already clinched a playoff spot and we know which seeding. It would give us a competitive advantage. So yes, the Browns and Steelers is the game, especially if the Steelers' backup quarterback plays, considering, as we talked about what happened the last time, he was taking a snap in the building.
I lost the plot there a little bit. So anyways, Buffalo and Pittsburgh are both 12-3 next week. Is it worth, what is that number 2 seed worth? That's really where the value or the decision, I think, is going to come in Tomlin's mind, because he's going to do what's best for the Steelers and nothing else. He doesn't care that they're playing the Browns. He's not going to be like, this is not going to be some macho fan.
No,
I have to beat my rivalry, or I'm going to let the team in. So I think it's going to come down to how much value he puts on that second seed. And he's not really going to have an idea of who they're going to be playing. It's like, if we're going to get the second seed, we're going to be playing this team in the first week, versus if we get the third seed, we're going to be playing this team, because all that's still going to kind of be up in the air as everything's going on. So it's going to be interesting to see if he actually sits guys or not.
The way, and this is me just looking at Steelers Twitter, someone brought up, we can start with the 2 seed. And then someone said, do you want to buy? And the other person's like, well, any real fan would know you don't get a buy, which I agree with, whoever that was on Twitter. But then they said, I think the way it's positioned now, if everything goes to plan, and the Browns, I think that could the 2 seed end up playing the Dolphins and the 3 seed end up playing the Ravens I feel like there might be a difference in who you play, but you won't know. You're right until it just be assumed. So I don't.
Well, right now, if everything
We'd be
were
the
to stay
7th
as it
seed.
is, Pittsburgh right now would be the 2 seed. Obviously, that'll
If
change.
Buffalo wins tonight,
right?
yeah.
But Baltimore is the 6th seed.
Right.
Miami's 5. So, that would be so. If Pittsburgh ends up 3, they get Baltimore at 6. Because Miami, it looks like Miami wins the tiebreaker over Baltimore.
They do for, I think, conference record or something.
Well, actually, you know what? That'll switch because they'll lose if we're gonna give Buffalo a win, that drops Miami down to 10-6. Baltimore is going to win; they're going to be 11-5, so they're going to be the 5th seed.
Well, that's if Buffalo. I expect Buffalo to win tonight. If they win tonight, there's no way Josh. I wouldn't. You'd be foolish to suit up Josh Allen in a game that is only for seeding. When I think that's what Pittsburgh has to think about. We saw last year how their team is just, but the difference between Roethlisberger and Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges or whoever the heck is, I don't even know who they have. But who they have behind Mason Rudolph is so different. And I mean, their offense is just, I was at that Thursday night game. Their offense is just it's so anemic and questionable when you put those backup guys. And it's so tailored around Roethlisberger that if they want to do anything in the playoffs, they have to have him. And that's how the Bills are as well. They can, I would assume both those teams set their starters. If it were the Browns, I'd say set Mayfield. If we were in their position where it was, we already had a home game and we were playing for seeding, I'd say, and we had the division, I'd say set Mayfield.
Well, it could be interesting then because it could break that we could be getting a pair of repeat games in the playoffs, because if Buffalo gets paired up against Miami and Pittsburgh gets paired up against Cleveland on Wild Card Weekend, depending on how things break tonight and then this Sunday.
That's honestly, we got to win. I'm going to say we win. That's a scenario I would like, I think, because all I don't know if we pick a time to win at that godforsaken yellow place, the ketchup palace or whatever, that would be the time. So I would welcome that challenge, but we got to win Sunday. Got to win. That's it. It's right there in front of you. This isn't, we talked off air about 2007 when we lost. Derek Anderson couldn't throw in windy Cincinnati. And I know we had a chance at the end, and that was incomplete to Colin Winslow, and then the next day it didn't matter. The next Sunday I was at that Browns 49ers game that we won by I think 10, 7, 14 points, whatever. And then of course the Colts started Jim Sorgi because they had clinched and the Titans won. They kept it close the Colts kept it close for a while, but they could do nothing on offense. So at least we control our own destiny, and that's huge. So win and we're in, and that's what we got to do. And yeah.
That's all you can ask for.
Yep.
All right. A lot of team news out of the Browns today. Cleveland signed wide receiver Alexander Hollins off the practice squad of the Minnesota Vikings. Hollins is 6 foot, 166 pounds. He's an undrafted free agent. He spent 10 weeks on the Vikings practice squad last season and appeared in the final 5 games. So kind of sounds like he's an insurance policy just in case one of the wide receivers can't go this week, because, at the very least, he's familiar to Stefanski.
Yes.
And I think Stefanski even said today that was part of the reason why he wanted, just having a familiar, face around the building, just as an insurance policy.
And I think, and I know we talked about this in our group chat for the Cleveland Collective podcasting group, but let's be honest, Marvin Hall didn't show anything yesterday. So I would say if something happens and several of the receivers couldn't go, I think you'd see Bradley or him up, before we see Marvin Hall again on the active roster.
Right. The club also signed guard Cordell Iwagwu. I should have looked up the pronunciation guy. To the practice squad. Cordell is an undrafted free agent. He was with Houston for a very short time on their practice squad earlier this year, before being released in September. I think that move is probably insurance because it came out that Nick Harris is now day-to-day with a knee injury.
Oof.
Obviously, the Browns don't have Hubbard. Stefanski is, quote, hopeful that Wyatt Teller will be back on the practice field this Wednesday. All of a sudden now, Teller, as bad as it is thinking, we don't want to have to roll out, with Nick Harris again. on Sunday. I don't think the Browns
We might
want to
welcome
roll out
it,
with
yeah.
Michael Dunn being backed up by Cordell Iwagwu if for some reason Wyatt Teller can't go. But then there's also the fear of I don't think the Browns would necessarily force Teller to play, but Teller might force himself to go out there.
And then
If he gets hurt again, then they somehow win, and then they really lose him for the playoffs. So it's just the offensive line all of a sudden is kind of becoming an issue, because now no update on Wills either today. So who knows what's going to go on with him? And all of a sudden now the strength of the team is like, ugh.
It just shows how important. I mean, we were fortunate. I won't say fortunate, but it just shows how that continuity on the offensive line is so important. And even a guy like Hubbard, it shows how important it was that swing guy can really just step in. And we didn't see, let's be honest, we didn't see what happened yesterday happen when Hubbard was in there playing right tackle or guard. We just didn't, I mean, he played well enough to where we weren't really talking about it. It wasn't, because we would still win, or we still played and ran the ball pretty well. So I would say, yes, offensive line depth might be our biggest, it's probably our biggest, in my opinion, offensive need in the offseason. Just some, if it depends how long Hubbard's out, but definitely get some 6th, 7th, 8th offensive linemen that we have a little more faith in. So I feel like that'll be our biggest offensive need in the, hopefully many weeks away in the offseason. So.
Right. It does sound like the Browns might be getting safety Ronnie Harrison back for the game, though. Harrison was activated last week from injured reserve. He was actually in practice last week, wasn't quite ready. Hopefully he comes back out. That'll be nice to see him back on the field. So fingers crossed on him.
Yeah. Yes. And you said that Kevin Stefanski was, quote, hopeful that Wyatt Teller could play. Literally every Browns fan in the greater universe is hopeful that Wyatt Teller plays on Sunday.
Yeah. And I mean, the Pittsburgh game was always sort of the loose target anyways.
Right.
I think,
for him and Harrison, I think, really.
Yeah. Especially, I think if Hubbard hadn't been hurt, there'd be a little less pressure to get Teller back out there. I think the pressure now has ramped up. So yes. Pittsburgh might have been the earliest he could be back, but I think now it's going to be you got to strap it up and you got to go and see what we can do here.
Yeah, I mean they'd never force him, obviously, but I think he would more force himself because I'm sure he wants to make the playoffs and just how much the team seems to care about one another. So I know he wants to be out there for the team. So again, I hope he plays, but I hope he doesn't push it. You're right, and then first quarter he's basically the nightmare scenario. So,
and then finally, linebackers Sione Takitaki and Ty Davis were both injured during the Jets game on Sunday, and according to Stefanski, they are now day-to-day with ankle injuries. So, Browns are definitely going to be without Goodson. They hope to have Phillips back. They might be without Takitaki. It's going to be an interesting juggling act this week.
It will. Let's be honest. Mac Wilson needs to get off social media, and he needs to step up. He does. It's time. This is it. I mean, if he's kind of playing for, I don't know what his contract situation is next year, but I mean I'd say his NFL life too, because what he's put on film this year is just not good enough. And I know I don't want to go to, but it hasn't been what we needed. And literally everyone in the entire city, region, the Browns fans across the world, the Browns backers will forgive him whatever happened this year if he steps up and plays a huge game on Sunday. Because in my opinion, the way you're saying it, I don't see a spot where we don't need him to start and play heavy snaps on Sunday.
Right. And then finally, obviously everyone is keeping optimistic that Landry, Higgins, Peoples-Jones, and Hodge, along with Jacob Phillips, are all going to be back at practice on Thursday. As long as they continue to test negative, that is all systems go there. And that'll obviously, they're only missing one day of practice, which is Wednesday.
Right.
I can't imagine Landry and Higgins not being at practice one day is going to have that big of an impact. It's not like they don't know what the Steelers are going to do on defense. It's not like they don't know how to game plan. This isn't a team that they only play once every 4 years. This is a team they play twice a year. So That's, if there's ever a week where it's, quote, okay, to have a couple of key guys miss, the first day of practice while the game plan's being put in. I think this is a week that it is okay.
Yeah, and I mean, and both those guys have been here since 2018, so their chemistry with Baker is fine. Even Hodge was here. I remember him making a big catch in last year's Steelers game. So I would say DPJ would be the guy who would, obviously being a rookie and this is first season, he would probably hurt the most of missing practice time. But I would have taken DPJ with like 2 seconds of practice in yesterday's game. So yeah, I hope that all 4 of them come back, but if we would have had one of them yesterday, it would have been a much different first half, I think. But
Definitely
it's water.
difference.
Yep, made a difference. It's water to the bridge. Let's win on. I'm just keep saying it. Let's win on Sunday. That's it. Let's beat the Yinzers and make the playoffs. That's it.
All righty. I think we are nearing the end of our time here. So, as frustrating as Sunday's loss was, this Browns team has proven to be resilient all season long. And I don't think there's a reason to believe that that's going to change now. They have not lost 2 games in a row all year. They've shown the mental toughness to get through the most unusual season anyone could ever imagine. They're sitting at 10-5 with a legitimate chance to make the playoffs. This is the second time they're going to be playing the Steelers, and I'm just looking. First time they played Baltimore, they put up 6 points. Second time they played Baltimore, they put up 42 points. First time they played Cincinnati, they put up 35 points. Second time they played Cincinnati, they upped that to 37. They only put up 6 points against Pittsburgh, or 7 points. I'm sorry. Don't want to shortchange the point total there. To Pittsburgh the first time. This team shows that the second time around, it's going to be doing a lot better. They kind of know what they're doing. They've put themselves in a position to make the playoffs because they've stuck together. They've worked to figure it out all season. And this Sunday is just another test that they're going to have to pass. And when they do that, nothing that happened this past weekend between the COVID test, between the workout in the garage, the delayed flight, anything happened to the Jets, none of that's going to matter as long as they win on Sunday.
Absolutely. Win on Sunday. And, in this, it'll really show that this is a resilient team because how many, because even we talked about it off air before, it seems like, oh, this is, I've heard from people, oh, Brown's going to Brown. And, it just, and I mean, I'm frustrated. Look, you can be frustrated about yesterday. I said some things after the game about us not deserving it. Honestly, I thought after the game was over, because when we talked last week, I thought if we all tied, and we tied with the Colts, that we weren't going to make the playoffs. So I'm happy to find out that when we talked about that last week, wherever I read that, it wasn't fully fleshed out yet. So I'm happy that we still have we can control our own destiny here. Of course, we can thank the idiot Raiders for, playing terrible defense and grabbing Ryan Fitzpatrick's face mask on Sunday night. So thanks for doing that, Raiders. But yeah, this, nothing that happened this weekend will matter if we win, and that's it. And we've said it. I've read on Twitter today, and I agree with it now, having some time. If you said we'll even say after week 1 in Baltimore that we have a week 17 game to play the Steelers, and if we win, we're in the playoffs, you would take it, I would take it, and 99.9% of Browns fans would take it.
All right. As always, we've said a lot. Have we said it all?
I think we said it all. We'll see everybody next. We have 2 options of what next week's podcast is going to be. I'm only going to entertain option A. So hopefully we'll be talking about, upcoming games a week from now. So that's all I'm going to say. Go Browns.
Thank you everyone for listening to another Cleveland Sports Collective podcast. Please rate and share this episode to help us as we continue to grow our network. Until next time, I'm Tom. He's Josh. Everyone have a happy new year. Stay safe and go Browns.
Go Browns, beat the Steelers.